The four Gospels are not meant in the New Testament to give a complete and exhaustive history of the life of Jesus. The focus of these Gospels is largely on the ministry of Jesus. Traditionally, Jesus is seen to be about 30 years old. That's found at the end of Luke, and his ministry is seen to last 3 years. And so, even on taking that small window, the Gospels only give a very narrow selection of material from what might be 3 years of the ministry of Jesus. We are in the Gospel of Matthew. We are going to be looking at Matthew chapter 13 and verses 57 to 58. I'm reading from the Amplified New Testament. And they took offense at him. That is, they repelled and hindered from acknowledging his authority and caused to stumble. But Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor, except in his own home country and in his own home. And he did not do many works of power there because of their unbelief, their lack of faith in the divine mission of Jesus. We need to remember what Nazareth was. It was not a village of Gentiles. It was a bunch of ordinary Jewish folk living in Galilee. In other words, they were the common, ordinary sort of person, Jewish wise, that you would expect to find throughout that region. People who are socially and culturally Jewish. If you challenged their faith and heritage, they probably would have responded against you. Now, I'm not saying that these people were belligerent people. I am saying that they were probably people who were pretty sure of who and what they were. I would also dare say that they were probably pretty proud of the fact that they were culturally, historically Jewish. Now, read the two verses that we have in this reading and let them soak in. The work of God was unable to happen there because the people of God were closed to the work of God. We like to believe in the church that the problem is out there. The problem is that pagan neighbor over there who comes home drunk every weekend and then proceeds to go berserko. The problem is over there behind the convenience store, which has become a marketplace for the sale of illicit drugs. The problem is in the government with all of its corruption and vices. The church can always find things to point fingers at. When we do that, we need to remember a town in Galilee who turned the cold shoulder on its own son. You see, the church can always play the blame game, and they are not necessarily wrong. But that is the point. The church may not be wrong in blaming out there, but the church can fail to see its own problems. You see, the church is not always wrong, but that does not make it always right. The fact was that Jesus could not do anything there. Remember, the problem was not with God, nor was the problem with those pesky pagans, the Romans. Here was a people who could have and should have known better. Now, if that first century church could do this, do we have the gall to believe the church in our day and age is immune from this? The tragedy is that far too often the church through history has stood in the way of God. People who were sure of who and what they were. People who thought they had a right vision of God and what he wanted to do. The great hindrance to the work of the church is not always out there. It is often in our midst. It is often there on a Sunday morning in the church. It should humble us as church folk to realize how often the church in history has been the problem to the work of the church going forth. In North American evangelicalism, we have a wide array of denominations. In part, this is because it can often be easier to start a movement than to get a closed-minded church to change its way. I'm not really sure what is better, to have all those denominations or to have people work where the work of God is not wanted or appreciated. Jesus came at the peak of his earthly ministry and ministerial success to his own people, and in the words of John, the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 11 in the NIV, and his own did not receive him. There are times when God calls us to task in the church we are in. There are times when the challenge is not doing the task, but the challenge is to get the church on side with us. In moments like this, it helps us to remember that even Jesus could not do anything in his home church.